When Angelina Hendricks was kicked out of an exclusive boutique because of her skin color, the staff had no idea she was the new owner. This act of prejudice sparked a radical change. Her next move would shock even those who had seen it all. But let's start from the beginning. Angelina Hendricks slowly stepped out of her luxurious car, casting one last glance at the now familiar logo of white luxury. She was dressed in a stylish yet understated outfit. Nothing that screamed wealth, but conveyed confidence and taste. She had acquired the boutique just a few weeks ago, knowing she was now entering the world of luxury fashion, a world that often greeted her with bias and skepticism despite her accomplishments. Today was her first visit as the new owner, and she decided to walk through the store without immediately revealing her identity. As she entered through the automatic doors, she felt the cold, appraising gaze of the staff. The boutique gleamed with pristine white interiors, polished marble floors, and elegant mannequins showcasing the latest trends. Yet the atmosphere among the employees shifted the moment they saw her. Angelina overheard two saleswomen whispering to each other as they glanced her up and down. The unspoken question in the air was clear. What was a black woman doing in such an elite space? She stepped toward the counter, but was promptly interrupted by Karen Miller, one of the senior saleswomen, a woman in her mid-30s with a frosty gaze and meticulously styled blonde hair. Karen stood in front of Angelina, looking at her with a slight smirk, as though assessing and instantly dismissing her. Her tone was dry, laced with subtle hostility, as if she found Angelina out of place in this environment. "Do you need something?" Karen asked, her voice cold and slightly irritated. Angelina took a deep breath, suppressing her frustration. She was used to this kind of treatment, but it left a bitter aftertaste every time. She was here as the owner, yet none of the staff seemed to suspect that. "Yes, I'd like to look at some of your clothing," she replied calmly, keeping her tone neutral. Karen eyed her up and down, as if trying to figure out who this woman really was. Her face took on an arrogant expression, as though she had already decided Angelina didn't belong here. Karen had no intention of allowing someone she viewed as an outsider to touch the expensive merchandise. "Sorry, but this store isn't for everyone," Karen said, her voice growing even harsher. "You might want to try somewhere else." Angelina felt a pang in her chest. She wasn't just a customer, she was the new owner. But she chose not to reveal that yet. Her mind fogged with anger for a moment, but she decided to stay composed and not show any weakness. "Why do you think that?" Angelina asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Karen shrugged, a satisfied smile playing on her lips. "We cater to high-end clients," she said, casting a final dismissive glance at Angelina's modest, by her standards, outfit. "We have our standards." That was the final straw, but Angelina wasn't ready to reveal the truth just yet. In her mind, she began to realize that right here in her own store, she had just encountered the very prejudice and systemic discrimination she intended to root out. Angelina took a deep breath, trying to quell the fury building inside her. She had faced this kind of attitude before in many other areas of her life, but here, in the boutique she now owned, it cut especially deep. Right in front of her stood a woman who had no idea who she was and judged her solely on her appearance. She wanted to respond, but before she could, Michael Thompson, the store manager, approached them. He was tall, blonde, and in his early 40s, with a cold, professional expression. He didn't greet Angelina or ask if she needed help. Instead, he looked at her with suspicion, as if she were an intruder in this perfectly polished world of luxury. "What's the issue?" Michael asked, glancing at Karen before turning to Angelina. His tone was clearly meant to assert control over the situation. Feeling the support of her superior, Karen raised her chin and, with a smug smile, gestured toward Angelina. "I'm just explaining to the lady that our store specializes in exclusive clothing, and she might want to shop elsewhere," Karen said with an air of superiority. Angelina could feel her patience wearing thin. She understood she had to maintain control, but the blatant discrimination, the condescending attitude, was shaking her resolve. All she needed was a few minutes to browse her own store, but instead she was being shown the door. Michael turned to Angelina, his face showing even more disdain. "Sorry, but our store does cater to a certain clientele," he said with icy politeness. We offer clothing for those who understand the value of our products and can afford them. His words, soft yet laced with venom, hit Angelina harder than she expected. He openly doubted her status and financial means without knowing the first thing about who she was. But still, Angelina held her composure. "Are you suggesting I can't afford this?" she asked, her voice calm but with a sharp edge of defiance. Michael smirked, glancing at Karen, who stood beside him, clearly pleased with the way things were going. "I'm not suggesting," he said with a slight smile. "I'm saying it outright. This store is for special customers, not for just anyone." At that moment, Angelina realized their prejudice wasn't an accident. This was how they ran the store, how they treated people they deemed unworthy. This wasn't just an insult, it was a systemic issue. She took another deep breath, knowing the moment of truth had come. Her patience had run out. She was here not just as a customer, but as the new owner, and she was no longer willing to tolerate this humiliation. "Perhaps you should reconsider your attitude," she said, pulling out the documents for the store from her bag. "Because, as it turns out, I'm the new owner of White Luxury, and the way you've treated me is unacceptable." Michael went pale, and Karen froze as if struck by lightning. A long, tense silence followed. Michael stood still, his face drained of color as he stared at the documents in Angelina's hand, then back at her, unable to believe what he had just heard. Karen, who had previously watched the situation with smugness, stood paralyzed, as if her world was crumbling before her eyes. "What did you say?" Michael finally stammered, disbelief laced in his voice. Angelina held the documents closer, locking eyes with him. "I said this store is now mine," she said, her voice steady but carrying the weight of years of battling bias and discrimination. "I bought it a few weeks ago, and you're speaking to the new owner." Karen slowly took a step back, realizing that her arrogance might just cost her career. She glanced at the other employees, who had visibly tensed up, understanding that the power had shifted completely to the woman they had just tried to eject. "This is a misunderstanding," Michael stammered, scrambling to regain control. "We didn't know. I mean, we just wanted to ensure that our clients received the proper service." But his voice gave away his panic. He realized that his rudeness and prejudice had just been exposed in front of the very woman he should have been serving. "You were certain my money wasn't good enough for your store." Angelina's voice rang like a bell. She no longer hid her anger, but her tone remained calm and collected, which only heightened the tension. "Did you think you could judge me by my appearance and simply throw me out? Is this how you treat everyone who doesn't fit your expectations?" Michael nervously adjusted his tie, searching for the right words. "No, of course not. This is just a misunderstanding," he repeated. But now his words sounded pathetic and hollow. Karen, her hands trembling slightly, finally gathered the courage to speak, though her voice was weak and shaky. "We didn't know, miss. I mean, ma'am, I just thought that—" "You thought you had the right to judge me based on how I look," Angelina interrupted her. "You thought you could make assumptions about my status or my abilities without bothering to find out who I am?" Karen fell silent, not knowing how to respond. She understood that every word from here on out could either save or doom her career, and the weight of that realization immobilized her. Michael, sensing the situation spiraling out of control, stepped forward, trying to regain the initiative. "Please, let us make this right, Madame Hendricks," his voice now pleading. "We can fix this. This was just a terrible mistake. We value all our customers, and you, of course, deserve the best service. Please, allow us to make amends." Angelina looked at him with icy calm. She knew she held all the power now, and she decided to use this moment to teach them a lesson. "Make it right?" she asked with a hint of sarcasm. "You think you can just apologize and go back to business as usual?" She took a step toward them, her presence and quiet authority seeming to dominate the entire room. "There will be new rules in this store," Angelina continued, her voice firm yet composed. "From now on, I will not tolerate this kind of behavior toward any of our customers. And if any of you can't accept these changes," She looked directly into the eyes of both Michael and Karen. "You can leave right now." Michael swallowed hard, clearly understanding that his career at the boutique was hanging by a thread. Karen nervously glanced at her colleagues, who stood silently, unsure of how to react to the unfolding scene. Angelina didn't wait for a response. She turned and confidently walked toward the exit, leaving them in stunned silence. Her final words echoed in the empty boutique. "That was your last chance." After Angelina left, an eerie silence hung over the store. None of the staff knew how to react to what had just transpired, and it seemed like everyone was waiting for something more to happen. Michael stood frozen, barely breathing, fully grasping the enormity of his mistake. Karen, still trying to process the fact that their arrogance had been directed at the new owner, realized they were on the verge of losing their jobs. Both of them knew that Angelina had sent a clear message. They were on the brink of being fired, and no excuses would be accepted. Outside, Angelina paused to gather her thoughts. She took a deep breath, feeling her anger subside, replaced by a firm sense of satisfaction for standing up for herself. However, the fight wasn't over. This was just the beginning. Her goal wasn't just to correct Michael and Karen's behavior, but to overhaul the store's culture so that white luxury would become a symbol of both wealth and equality. Hours after the incident, as the day was winding down, Angelina returned to the store, this time as the official owner. Meetings with the managers and staff awaited her. As soon as she stepped through the doors, Michael and Karen approached her, their faces filled with visible concern. "Madam Hendricks, please allow us to explain," Michael began, trying to keep his composure. "There's no need for explanations," Angelina said firmly, her voice calm but full of authority. "I've seen everything I needed to." Karen stood next to Michael, pale-faced, unable to meet Angelina's gaze. "Your behavior today was unacceptable," Angelina continued, her gaze piercing both employees. "You showed just how biased you are by judging people based on their appearance. And this isn't just a mistake, it's a systemic problem I intend to fix. You will no longer be working here." Michael opened his mouth, trying to say something, but stopped himself, realizing that any attempt to defend himself would only make things worse. Karen couldn't hold back, raising a shaky hand as she desperately said, "But I didn't mean, I just thought—" "You thought?" Angelina cut her off. "You thought you could insult people just because they don't fit into your narrow idea of who deserves to be here. That is unacceptable in any business, and I will not tolerate it in my store." Angelina paused, looking at the rest of the staff who had gathered around, clearly shaken by what was happening. "Each of you should know this. I intend to change this store. From now on, respect will be shown to all customers, regardless of their appearance, skin color, or status, and I expect everyone here to be part of that change." Michael and Karen were silent, realizing their fate was sealed. Security, called at Angelina's request, escorted them out of the building. The other staff members, who had barely contained their emotions, began exchanging glances, quietly discussing the incident. Angelina softened her tone as she addressed them. "I understand that change can be intimidating, but it's necessary. We're moving forward, and white luxury will become a place where every customer feels important and welcomed. I'll be overseeing the process to ensure you're all part of it." She then began giving instructions and held a meeting with key employees to outline the steps needed to change the store's internal policies and culture. Angelina made it clear that she would no longer tolerate any form of racial discrimination or bias. Word of the incident at the boutique spread quickly throughout the city. The story of how a black woman became the new owner of an elite store and ousted discriminatory staff caused a stir. On social media, people praised Angelina for her firmness and resolve. Her actions became a symbol of the fight for equality, inspiring many others. In the weeks that followed, white luxury began attracting new clients who appreciated the changes in service and the welcoming atmosphere in the boutique. Angelina didn't just change the store's policies, she transformed it into a place where people felt equal and respected. This victory was not just personal for her, but served as an example of how systemic problems could be addressed with courage and determination.